Hey guys, I'm going to be reading pages 176 through, I think it's 181, of your big text packet, this one. We're going to go over any questions you guys have tomorrow, Wednesday from 6 to 7 on the live feed. So if you guys have questions, I'll be going over them. After I post this video, I'll be uploading the vocabulary to the Google Classroom. So if you guys have questions about vocab, you can either look on the Google Classroom, look the words up yourself, or email me, wait till we go live. It's up to you. So here we go. Controlling disease outbreaks. In 1347, a ship docked at the port of Messina on the island of Sicily, now part of Italy. The people of Messina soon discovered that most of the sailors on the ship were dead. City leaders quickly figured out that the dead sailors must have been infected with some terrible disease. The city leaders ordered the ship to leave Messina, but the illness had already infected at least a few people in the trading town. Within a short time, many people in Messina had died from the mysterious disease. Traders who had been in Messina on business returned to their own towns, bringing the illnesses with them. In turn, people who left those towns for other destinations also carried the disease. The illness spread like wildfire throughout Europe, reaching England in less than a year. Over the next few years, the disease killed more than 20 million people in Europe. It also killed millions of people in the Middle East and Asia. People who became infected suffer from chills and fever. Their lymph nodes swelled, creating hideous black boils on their necks and armpits. The most of them died. People called the disease the Black Death. Centuries later, scientists identified the cause of the disease, a bacterium called Yersinia pestis, a highly contagious organism. It is the cause of 3 different kinds of plague today, known as the bubonic plague, septicemic plague, and pneumonic plague. Bubonic plague has a 50 to 60% fatality rate if left untreated. The other 2 forms of the disease are almost always fatal if left untreated. Yet an outbreak of a plague in Peru in 2010 infected only 17 people, did not travel far, and resulted in just 1 death. Why were there such drastically different results from the 14th century epidemic and the one in 2010? Outbreak control methods are a big part of the answer. What is an outbreak? In the scientific community, the word outbreak means the same thing as epidemic, the rapid spread of infectious disease within a population. An infectious disease is a disease caused by a bacterium, virus, parasite, or another type of microorganism. Examples of infectious diseases include the common cold and influenza, or the flu. Examples of diseases that are not infectious, in other words, that are not caused by a microorganism that has entered the body, include skin cancer and diabetes. For a situation to be considered an outbreak, the number of people who become infected and the rate at which they become infected must be higher than what is typically expected in a particular area at a particular time. In other words, let's say that in community A, the typical number of people who become sick with influenza, the flu, every March is 12. If 14 people come down with the flu one year, health experts would not consider the situation to be an outbreak. However, if 50 people were to become sick with the flu, the situation would be considered an outbreak. Contagious or non-contagious. Outbreaks can involve contagious and non-contagious infectious diseases. A non-contagious infectious disease is one that cannot be spread from person to person. Lyme disease is a non-contagious infectious disease. A person can become infected with Lyme disease if he or she is bitten by a tick that carries a certain parasite, but a person infected with Lyme disease cannot pass on the disease to other people. A contagious disease is one that can spread from person to person. Many contagious diseases in humans also initially begin, like Lyme disease, with an insect or animal bite. But unlike Lyme disease, a contagious disease can spread from an infected person to others. Some contagious diseases are airborne, which means you can contract the disease by breathing the same air as someone who has the disease. To contract non-airborne types of contagious diseases, you must come in direct or indirect contact with someone who has the disease. Direct contact means actually touching the person. Indirect contact means touching something the person has touched. If you drink from the same cup as an infected person, You have had indirect contact with that person and could become infected with the disease. The Black Death was highly contagious infectious disease. It was airborne and could be contracted through both direct and indirect contact, all qualities that allow it to spread quickly. Identifying outbreaks. When local health officials suspect that an outbreak of a disease has occurred or may occur, they typically follow a set of steps recommended by the World Health Organization. 1. Alert governmental health authorities. 2. Investigate the situation by identifying as many potentially infected people as possible and finding out how they may have been infected and who they may have infected. 3. Confirm that those suspected of infection have actually been infected. 4. Treat those infected. 5. Intensify observations to identify whether the disease is spreading at a faster rate than expected. 6. Prepare for controlling an outbreak. Why must outbreaks be controlled? Controlling an outbreak of a disease means limiting the number of people who become infected. This reduces the number of people who could potentially die from the disease. It also reduces the number of people who could potentially simply suffer through symptoms or be left disfigured or disabled by the disease. Infectious diseases do not spread in a linear pattern from one person to the next person and then just to the next person. Instead, they spread exponentially. One person may spread the disease to 3 or 4 people, who in turn spread it to 3 or 4 others, and so on. The worst infectious diseases. It costs a lot of money to identify and control an outbreak, but if you consider the terrible effects of some of the worst infectious diseases, it is difficult to deny that controlling outbreaks is worth the cost. Influenza. Most people call this highly contagious disease the flu, and it is caused by a virus, but not just one virus. A strain or type of influenza begins in birds and animals such as pigs. Some form of the virus strikes every year. Symptoms include fatigue, chills, fever, muscle pains, and nausea. Healthy people usually recover from the flu with no treatment. Children and the elderly are at most risk from the flu. Worldwide, the flu kills between 25,000 to 500,000 people every year. However, in 1918, a particularly deadly form of the flu virus killed 50 million people all over the world. Malaria. The World Health Organization has designated malaria as one of the 6 most deadly infectious diseases. Malaria kills 3,000 people every day. That adds up to 1 million people each year. Of these victims of the disease, 75% are children. Symptoms of malaria include difficulty with breathing, convulsions, and fever. Some people infected with malaria may also suffer from jaundice. Malaria is caused by a parasite and is spread by mosquitoes. A mosquito sucks in a small amount of blood when it bites a person. If the person has malaria, the virus will be in the person's blood. When the mosquito bites the next person, it injects the blood and the virus from the first person into the new victim. Malaria is not contagious. You cannot contract it from someone who has malaria. You can only contract it from a mosquito that is carrying the virus. Tuberculosis. Every year, this disease kills 1.5 million people. It is caused by an airborne bacteria. If you are standing near someone with tuberculosis who is coughing, talking, sneezing, or even laughing, you could contract the disease. Symptoms include coughing, weight loss, fatigue, fever, and night sweats. Laboratory confirmation. Doctors familiar with infectious diseases will often recognize the symptoms of a particular disease and quickly be able to make a diagnosis. However, to make a confirmation of the diagnosis, samples from the sick patients must be analyzed at a laboratory. The following steps must be followed in order to ensure accurate testing of the sample and appropriate outbreak response. 1. Collect samples from patients using sanitary specimen containers and following sampling techniques appropriate for the disease and sample to be collected. 2. Transport samples in leak-proof containers to a laboratory. 3. Test samples at the laboratory following quality assurance procedures. 4. Report results to health officials. 5. Analyze the results in terms of what control measures are needed. Accurately testing samples and confirming that the samples contain evidence of a disease is crucial to the early detection of an outbreak. And early detection is a primary goal of outbreak surveillance. According to the World Health Organization, early detection can have a major impact in reducing the numbers of cases and deaths during an outbreak. So that is pages 176 through 181. You guys are encouraged to start working on the questions on your own. But again, I will be going live tomorrow from 6 to 7 to go over these questions with you. You guys are splitting the time slot with the 7th graders. I think I'll do 7th grade first and then 8th grade for the second half. So if you guys want to tune in maybe around 6:30, feel free. But that's all I have. Bye, guys.